Hello, Dr. Moore. So I'm going to be talking briefly about a lesson called a comprehensive versus an intuitive approach to problem solving. I believe that success breeds success through understanding the rules of engagement, by having awareness of that process, and then changing course accordingly. So as a student of science, I believe it's critical that you understand what approach you take to problem solving, right? What steps you take, what the process is to get to the solution. And if it works, then you can begin to replicate that consciously. But if it doesn't work, you know how to change course accordingly and modify and refine and adapt and optimize to make sure you can get to that W, that win. So a comprehensive approach is a methodical, systematic approach, right? Where you're using logic and you're using facts to work your way to a solution. An intuitive approach is where you're coming from a place of awareness, right? A place of knowingness, that gut feeling. And in science, people can use either one of those approaches or a combination of both. Because sometimes discoveries don't come from existing knowledge. They come from a place of knowingness. You still have to do experiments and prove that it's right, but that model, that theory, may come from that gut or that intuition. And so whatever approach you're taking as a student of science to solve a problem, either it be methodical, comprehensive, or intuitive, you want to be able to be conscious of that and change course accordingly if it's not working. Because at the end of the day, we want to be able to win. Win, 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 no matter what. Thank you. All right, so the lesson that we're going to be covering today is a comprehensive versus an intuitive approach to problem solving. Let me have someone read that quote for us real quick, that brilliant quote that's on this lesson.
Success breeds success through one's approach of engagement, awareness of the process, and the ability to change course.
All right, so what am I suggesting or saying you believe with that statement?
I feel like trying to find the words here for it.
All right, go ahead. You'll just jump in real quick. Go ahead.
To succeed, you need to have a positive mindset.
Okay. All right. So your mindset and your attitude is part of that approach. What else? What else am I kind of chewing at?
I'm thinking maybe I'm going to work backwards with this. The ability to change course. That's when things aren't working, you have to find another route to get there. And I feel like that can be done by awareness of the process. If you don't know the process, if you don't know your own process, you can't really change course. If you need to know how you got where you're going. You need to know where you're trying to get to, and being aware of your own process is how you are able to change it. Working backward a little further, success breeds success through one's own approach of engagement. If you are successful in certain processes, then you're bound to want to do them again. But if you find success in adjusting those processes, you open yourself up to learning even more. So you can kind of forgot the word for it, but have them work together.
Yeah, so I like how you reverse engineered that. And no, it was brilliant. And I think you hit all the major points. So, you know, I get a chance to see how your mind works as you were problem solving and breaking this down and saying, well, let me take the pieces that I do know and start in the back and then move myself forward. So no, I mean, it's, if you win at something, it's good to know what approach you took to win and what steps you took. So like you were saying, if you see something similar, maybe you overlay that same steps to that process and win. Or maybe you do a little twist to it because it's slightly different and still win, but you're thinking about it, right? But if you win at something and in the back of your mind, you're like, I won it by luck, you know, or you have a really good processor in your mind and it processes fast, but you're not aware of how it processes. It's just, you know, I did this and the output is this, right? And some people have that. Then you still can't replicate that because you're not even conscious of it. And there's a lot of people who are really, really, really brilliant and good at thinking, but have a harder time teaching people what they know and putting it into words and explaining it, right? That's another skill set, to be conscious of something and then know how to articulate that or explain it in a way that maybe someone who even thinks differently than you can understand it. But you have to be able to be conscious of that approach and steps to be able to do that, and hopefully do that in an effective way. All right, so I give a definition of approach: to move towards something, a direction. So this game right here, I want you guys to spend the next 3 to 5 minutes, and I want you guys to think about this real quick, right? If you're randomly rolling 2 dice, and you want the dice to end up adding up to 8, what is the probability that you will roll an 8? You got some space right here on your sheets. Anybody need a pencil or a pen? Spend a few minutes and I want you to think about it. It's time to think. All right, y'all. Let's close it out. Does anybody feel like they have an answer that they want to share? And if so, please come to the board real quick and show us your thinking behind your answer.
So, you're rolling 2 dice. And dice 2. You need to make this combo equal 8.
Speak a little louder, please.
So it could be a 2 plus a 6, a 4 plus a 4, a 6 plus a 2, another 4 plus a 4, because the other dice could be a 4 as well, a 5 and a 3, and a 3 and a 5. You gotta realize how many combinations of a dice roll there can be, because there's 2 6-sided dice. That means that there's 36 total rolls in a pair of 2 6-sided dice, and this amount is 6. So that means that we have a ratio of 1/6 as a percent. That equals about 16% chance that you would roll a 8.
Okay, nice. Does anybody else got anything different or has a different approach to solve this? What are you thinking? Come on up.
Well, first I'm thinking I did my math wrong.
No, don't lose confidence in yourself. Go through your process, right?
Okay, all right.
Right or wrong. Go through your process.
All right. Well, the only thing I was thinking different is, I might be wrong here, but you, let's see. I was doing something like this. I was just counting each side of the dice. And I was going 1, 2. I was doing that all the way.
Mhm.
Count up to 36, of course, because that's the answer. But I was thinking, I was pondering, like, would rolling a 5 and a 3 on each dice, would that would, I wasn't sure if having, it sounds dumb when I say it out loud now, but I wasn't sure if having the same number on each die would decrease your chance, or I'm not good at this.
No. I mean, so using this technique of you taking a number and doing that,
Yeah.
what was your actual answer?
I actually didn't get one. I didn't finish.
Not yet? Okay.
No.
All right. But we see the approach that you're taking.
Yeah, that's the approach I was taking.
Okay.
I was counting up and I was going to rule out, what I was going to do is I was going to rule out the different, so I was going to do 2 and 6, and then 4 and 4.
Take out one of my 4 and 4s. Yeah, I messed up in that.
Why is that, Josh?
Well, I mean,
Because if you rolled a 4 on one die and then a 4 on another die, it wouldn't be differently. You can't like switch that combination.
yeah,
Make
well,
it
yeah,
different.
that's actually the part that I got hung up on. Is I was trying to ponder whether there was a difference between this 2 and 6 and this 2 and 6, and trying to figure out if having the duplicate would increase or decrease your chance of rolling an 8, because they're identical dice. You know, so if you roll a 2 and 6, you roll a 2 and 6 no matter which dice lands. But so
Imagine if they were labeled.
that's where I got hung up. That's why I
Okay, but if the
didn't
dice
finish.
are different color,
Yeah.
one's red and one's white.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I was like, I don't know if I should come up and show.
No. This is good stuff. Who
Yeah.
else? Who else has a different approach or a different answer? Come up, Nikita.
And the only reason.
Nah, we're not talking about anything. We just we're going through the process right now.
Like,
Yeah, so I actually like calculated, computed all the possible cases for 8, and like I got like 21 like possible case for all of them. Like
Okay.
for 1 is like right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Mm-hmm.
For 2 is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on.
Mhm.
Wait, I think I'm confused in my. So,
Is this right here a representative of one dice?
huh?
Is the one with the to the left of the semicolon? Is this representative of one dice or?
No. I think like if like first die is 1,
Mm-hmm.
his like second die would be like one of the
I get what you're saying.
like here's like the so you can see one with 1 with 2 with 3, right? For 2 I didn't put 1 because it's here. Is the possible case here 2 and 1.
But if it's another dice though, you could.
Oh yeah, I didn't. Yeah, I think we can like. I think I should like recalculate to add like for another dice.
Okay.
But overall, like by this method, I got like 6 over. It's like 21. All the like, in the sum, it's 6 over 21, and I got like around like this percentage. But it's not correct.
All right. So did anybody? Thank you. Did anybody try this? Because I like the direction you were going. You want to go?
Wait, I don't know what just happened.
No. Go ahead. If you did something different, please come up.
Alright.
I gotta figure out how folks are thinking around here, what their approach is and what their process is.
So basically, I thought of like the first dice you could roll a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, and a 6. And then I did it for the second dice as well.
You need another pen? Not good times bad.
And then I looked and then I saw what numbers could add up to 8. And then I did it's 2 and 6, 3 and 5, and then 4 and 4.
Mm-hmm.
And then each of these things, so there's two ways you could get 2 and a 6, a 2 and a 6 and a 6 and a 2. And then for each of these, there's two outcomes that could happen. That could happen. So there's 2 here, 2 here, 2 here.
Is it 2 for the 4?
Um,
The 4, 4?
nah, there's only 1, I think. And then there's. Wait. I'm not sure if there's 2, but.
I love your
All right, so
Yeah.
so Win wants to answer that. Go ahead, Win. You seem like you're excited.
And then sure then.
Sure, go ahead, go ahead.
I love that
What I
process.
got
That
was like
dope.
6 out of 36 or 5.
Okay, so very similar to Jeremiah.
I actually have a question about this too, because this one is different from my answer. But then I figure out 1, 2. I think it's like that,
I was waiting to see if someone was going to do this.
and that's the sum. Then we could get 8, 8, 8, 8, 8. So from that, we could see there's only 5 of them. There's only one possibility of 4 and 4. So maybe it's
So 5.
sorry.
Okay. All right, so 5 out of 36 is the right answer. And I would argue that this is more of a comprehensive approach where you can visually see it. You know, you could also put X's down there too, but you can see that if this is dice 1 and this is dice 2, that there's only 5 ways that you can get to 36. Another way to think about it, the first time that I tried this exercise, I did it this way because I'm very visual and I want to see it. But if you have dice 1 and dice 2, right? We know that the only numbers that can get us to 8 are 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is 5 out of a 6 chance you're going to roll one of these numbers. A 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, or a 6, right? So then what's the probability that you're going to roll the number that you need to have it on this dice equal 8? And it's just 1 out of 6. That you'll roll the matching 1, right? So it still gets you to 5 out of 36, but it's just a different logic, right? Right, because again, these are 2 independent events. You roll this one first, you roll this one next. You can roll them at the same time, but they still are 2 independent events, right? But I had to go this way first, and then my mind was like, this is a shortcut if I'm thinking about it a different way. All right, so the reason why this exercise that I had you guys do it is because how you approach this on paper, how your mind started thinking about how to get the right answer is very valuable in regards to your natural way that you like to approach problems. And we're going to talk about that in more detail, and I'm going to give a lot of different examples because how conscious you are on how you approach a science problem or a math problem gives you a lot of insight on how your mind works and how it likes to problem solve. But of course, we're very malleable and adaptable. We can learn different ways of thinking, right? You may have a way that your mind tends to want to think, and then there's ways that you can learn how to think and still get to and solve, more difficult and challenging problems. All right, so on the next page, you can just select what you believe describes your approach. Was it logic-based? Was it visual using logic? Was it memory-based? Maybe some of you guys had a formula because you're a math person and you're like, yeah, to solve this, I got a formula in my mind, boom, I'm gonna plug it into this formula and I'm good, right? Was it intuitive based using logic? But how would you describe your approach of how you went about trying to understand and solve that problem?
Can you define intuitive based using some logic?
So, sometimes when you're solving a problem, your intuition is, I have a feeling that I'm gonna move in this direction. Maybe there's 1, 2, or 3 possibilities of how you could go, but your intuition says, I got a feeling that it's this way. And sometimes in math, people who are intuitive based skip steps, right? They skip steps because their intuition is like, oh, I think it's this. And you still may get the right answer. But any person who's your math professor is gonna still want you to show your steps so they can understand how you went about getting that. But yes, a lot of times solutions to things aren't based on logic. And you see that a lot in science, where, I can say that, back when I did science, I was trying to understand what genes cause men and women to be infertile, right? Sperm in men and eggs in women. And there was a way that we were trying to understand this biochemical pathway for that I came up with as I was chilling at my house one day drinking a 40-ounce of beer, right? So I'm just keeping it real. I was in my house and I was drinking my little 40 and I have my little whiteboard up and I was just like, ooh, I think it does this by translational regulation. And I just started doodling all these different proteins, regulating it, and it felt right. I didn't tell nobody about it, but in my back of my mind, I was like, ooh, I think that's the way this thing's gonna do, right? So anyway, maybe a couple weeks later, I started doing these experiments, and some of the things in my experiments were some of the things that ran my model that were coming out. And I was like, ugh. Right? So I went to my boss, and I said, I think that these proteins are doing this inside eggs and sperm. And she's like, well, no one's thinking about that, where'd you come up with that from? And I was like, it makes sense to me, woo, woo, woo. And she's like, no. I was like, okay. And then another week went by and she was like, Fred, I've been thinking about your model. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's a cool little model. Do you mind if I use that model and submit a grant proposal to the NIH? I'm like, man, I don't care, go on and use it, right? So she submits it, we get funded for $1.4 million. And I was able to show through my experiments that the model was correct. But it wasn't like it came through logic. It came because intuitively, I just felt right. In science, you still have to show through your experiments that it's correct. But a lot of discoveries, more than you ever would know, come from that intuitive place of knowingness versus I'm using information that someone else has figured out before and using logic. And sometimes it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Right? But that still gives you a sense of how your mind works. I like to play on the right brain intuitive side, but I can still go linear left if I need to or want to. But I like to play, I like to be creative on that right brain intuitive side. But those are two opposite approaches of how you can solve problems. And we're gonna talk about that and talk about that in a little bit more detail. So you guys again can start being aware and paying attention to how you go about problem solving, and of course expand your way and be extraordinary at your way, but also know how to change it up if it's not working. If that makes any sense.
It does.
All right. So question number 3: you have studied hard for a calculus class. You did all the problems at the end of the chapter and took a practice exam the day of the real exam, the day before the real exam. You scored a 90% on the practice exam, so you're thinking, I'm good, right? On the actual exam, you felt anxious, and you only finished 70% of the exam. In addition, you are not confident you answered the questions that you did answer correctly. What approach would you use to identify the problem affecting your performance on that math exam, and how would you fix it? I'm not saying it's none of y'all, because you guys are stellar students, and that's not the kind of problem that you guys would have to be dealt with. But just role play in your mind, if it was you, what would you do? What's the first thing you would do? Anybody over there in virtual land feeling like
I mean, it sounds like a confidence issue, no?
okay, so what would you do?
I like hype myself up.
Okay, so you think it's maybe an attitude, mindset? So hyping yourself up is gonna get that revved up a little bit?
Maybe because you did so well on the practice, you think, "Oh, I got this." And then you don't go into the actual exam thinking, "Oh, what do I need to look over one more time?" or something like that.
Okay. So I'm gonna put increase confidence and hype self up. Okay. What else, you guys? What we gonna do? Because we don't want to finish this class with that C. C is good for some folks, but you can let me know if it's good for you.
I'd probably address my approach to learning the content, because I'm scoring 90 on the practice exam. That's an exam that I can practice over and over. I probably just got really good at those questions. I really want to drop in with myself and kind of maybe come up with some sort of associations to remember the actual how to actually complete the problem. Also, in terms of the anxiety, I'd probably check in with myself, make sure I had a good breakfast, make sure that I slept well, ask myself what can I do next time to ensure that I'm physically and mentally prepared for the test. Kind of trying to figure out what's different about my morning that morning than other mornings, aside from the test itself, because anxiety from the night before can bleed over to the rest of your day.
Okay.
Some meditation maybe.
So you said two things. Look at sleep, breakfast, morning routine, right? And you said look at, I'll use my own word, conditions of practice exam to, okay, look at conditions for practice exam and real exam. You're getting some good stuff here. Anything else? Some of y'all gonna blame the teacher, right? We put that on there. The teacher threw some questions on there that they didn't belong.
That really does happen.
I know it does. I mean, y'all thinking it. Y'all just don't want to say it to me because you don't want me to think you're that person. But I'm thinking it anyway. What else? Anything else?
I like what he said about knowing that you're confident in the practice exam, but maybe you were just really good at answering those specific questions and not really getting the concepts behind it and how to apply it to something that's maybe written a little differently on the actual exam.
Okay. One of the things that I'll also just add, you guys were thinking it, but you guys just didn't want to say it because you wanted me to talk about it, is did you time yourself on that practice exam? No, you did not. That's not written down. Right? So you got jittery under pressure. You got to practice that practice exam under pressure. And guess what? You only finished 70% because you got jittery under pressure, right? Because it's a whole lot different sitting up at Phil's Coffee over there with your feet kicked up with a little latte doing a practice exam and me putting that clock on you and saying, get it. Flip the paper over now. What? Right? I mean, it's a whole lot different, right?
Oh, yeah.
But you probably would have got to that by understanding what were the conditions that you had in that practice exam and comparing them, right? So, which leads us to the comprehensive versus the intuitive approach. So the comprehensive approach is a methodical approach to problem solve that uses systematic ways of thinking, where you explore all possibilities. We've seen that with the first example with the dice game when we had the visualization there, right? And you were able to go through and figure out there were 5 possibilities based on dice 1 and dice 2. You're exhausting all possibilities, right? But there's also what we call the intuitive approach, which uses intuition and your gut instinct and knowingness to approach a problem and come up with a solution. And maybe some of the answers for the reason why you didn't do well on that exam was this, my gut instinct is that it was this. But looking at all the conditions between the difference between the practice exam and the real exam, you can then begin to exhaust all possibilities, which is more comprehensive. I'm not saying one is bad or good, right? But this is just giving you a sense because, you know, it could have been increasing confidence, right? You got to hype yourself up. But do you want to know if it could be anything else too? And sometimes when you're learning something, especially the first time through, you may want to go through and spend the time thinking about all the possibilities just so you're conscious of it. Then you can start skipping things if you want. But everybody has their own approach. Any thoughts, any comments thus far? Especially in virtual land.
You know, actually, the confidence thing, I think it can also be the other side of that coin. You could be overly confident.
Yeah.
Be overly confident and then get anxiety because the time goes on. It's like, oh, well, I don't actually know any of this. You know, it's like, I got this. And you're like, oh, I don't study nearly as much as you should. Or, you know, you run through it once or twice. It's like, yeah, I can have it.
So how do you compensate if you tend to be overconfident? How do you able to put that in check?
Well, personally, I try to find a way to break it. Try to find a way to break myself.
Okay.
You know, if I'm overconfident, I mean, I'll know if I'm overconfident if I can easily find something that I'm not sure about. See, I mean,
Hold that thought. What's that thought?
Yourself.
Say it again.
You gotta humble yourself.
Humble? Okay. But is humble tear yourself down? Or?
No, it's bring yourself back to reality.
Reality is I'm the SHIT. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm walking to this exam and I'm like, I got this, right?
Yeah, but did you study?
I mean, I studied enough.
Okay. Did you answer every question on the test?
I answered every question. You know what I'm saying? Not everything was right, but I answered every question that was on the test. And it was the teacher's fault that I got it wrong. I'm just saying, like, that's not good.
No, you need to go down, reevaluate your studying strategy, try and review information better. And it said in there that for the person that answered the questions didn't answer every single one, only completed about 70%. Even if you think you're going to get a question wrong, you should still answer it because best case scenario, you do get it right. In between, you might get some of it right, get partial credit. In worst case scenario, you don't get it right, but at least you answered it.
Okay. Did you want to finish your thought?
yeah, I try to poke holes in my overconfidence.
Okay.
Because if if I really do know it, right, I should be able to stress test it.
Yep.
If I don't actually know it, if it is overconfidence, then it shouldn't be too difficult for me to stumble upon something I'm not quite sure about.
I like that idea of stress testing. That should be something that you guys hopefully can build into your system, right? When you believe that you know something, you should be stress testing anything associated with that to make sure that everything aligns with what you believe you know. And this is real, right? I call it emotional integrity, but how well you do as a student of science, in my mind, is directly proportional to how honest you can be with yourself. Other disciplines, you can have a good talk game, you can have a good memory game, you can have a good write game, and you can be like, I'm good, I got an A on this, right? That don't work in STEM. If you think you know something and you really don't, it's gonna come out at some point on that exam, right? If you got a photographic memory and you get a good pattern recognition game, when they did the two-step twist on you and twist things a little round a little bit, you can be like, I never seen this, and you're gonna get your feeling hurt on that exam, right? So your ability to be honest with yourself is critical. You have to be honest with yourself. You can lie to everybody else in the room. You can lie to everybody else in the world, but if you lie to yourself, you're a fool, right? Like, come on. And it happens. One of my best friends that I grew up like big wheels with, we were both at the community college together, Solano College. And he was overconfident. But he would study with me, and he'd be like, oh, I know this, but I'm like, you do? I said, what about this? What about that? Oh, okay. And he could get a B in a course if he studied with me, because I would always stress test him. But he couldn't do it for himself. I transferred to Berkeley. He transferred to Davis. He never graduated. Couldn't do it for himself. Smart guy. But if you're always making up stories in your mind about how you know something you really don't know, and you don't have a reality to kind of bring it down to like, this is where it really is, then yeah, you have to be honest with yourself. So something to think about. Now this comprehensive approach, I'm giving you two different examples. Matter of fact, let me have somebody read that. Who hasn't said anything? Matter of fact, somebody in virtual land. Anybody want to read that? You, Jonathan?
Which one, sir?
Read box to the left, box 1 for comprehensive approach. You are a business person.
You are a business person who is negotiating the exclusive sale of your only product. Before the meeting, you calculate your break-even number and all possible variations of how you can make a profit in anticipation of the direction the negotiations may potentially go during the meeting.
Okay, go ahead and read the intuitive approach to that same scenario.
You are a business person who's negotiating the exclusive sale of your only product. Before the meeting, you research previous tactics that the company has used to license products. Your intuition is that they will push the negotiation in a particular direction. Thus, you spend your time before the meeting calculating the outcome of this particular direction.
So you guys understand the differences, the nuances between those two approaches there? What do you think?
I'm thinking in one, you're only preparing for one scenario. You're kind of making an assumption about where, like what direction the business discussion will go in.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're not really prepared for any other outcomes if it does not go the way you expect.
Okay. So the intuitive approach, but you're still kind of doing a little bit of research, right? It's not like I ain't doing my homework. You know, I've looked at the last couple companies that you close deals on, and this is a tactic that you've used. You know, my gut is saying you're probably going to move in that direction. However, that comprehensive approach is I'm preparing for everything. And interesting note. So, something to think about. So I have a friend that had got their PhD in business. And part of their thesis was interviewing these top CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. And part of that was understanding how they make decisions. Do they make decisions on the approach that they're going to use for their business by using data, or do they use it based on their intuition? Anybody having a sense what you think the ratio may be on how they go about making decisions?
I'd say it's inconsistent based on the company, but honestly, probably not too far off from like 60-40, for being honest.
Okay.
I really think that this is coming from a lowly peasant perspective, but I do think a lot of Fortune 500 companies tend to shoot themselves in the foot every now and then because of things that CEOs do.
Okay. Anybody having a different percentage, different take on this? I'll go ahead and just say the answer. The majority make that decision intuitively. They'll look at the data, but then they'll go with their gut. And that's how they win. This is the thing. Especially in areas in the industry like science, people can present data to you. They can present these models of what they think it is. Oh, this new potential drug candidate, could be the next $1 billion drug, and it shows this efficacy in this area. We don't know what it does in these particular areas. But the reality is maybe 1 out of 10 drug actually gets from that process to approval. Period. Logic is not going to get you there. Something has to be like, because the probability is so low, right?
Yeah.
And so when you're talking to somebody they can read you and be like, no, this person's bullshitting. This person's making some stuff. I mean, they're using other gifts, not just logic.
Well, it's like your gut will tell you stuff. Like 80% of your serotonin is produced in your gut, and it has a lot. I mean, your brain processes a lot of like very subtle signals from people and things around you. And it'll just like if you listen to it, it'll talk to you. It'll tell you which way to go.
So all that to say is there's no right or wrong. We're just having a conversation, right? Because we ain't got nothing to do right now. We're entertaining each other. All right, second one, cell. You are a scientist who's trying to understand how a new virus utilizes a receptor on the surface of a blood cell to get into the cell and attack it. You develop an assay, which is just a test, to test all the receptors on the surface of the blood cell to see which one binds that virus, right? There's a picture there. This is a cell. There's receptors all over. You want to figure out what's going to bind to these receptors to get into the cell. Intuitively, you're a scientist who's trying to understand how this new virus utilizes receptors to get into the surface of a cell to attack it. Before the experiment, you study the literature. And the roles of receptors on the surface of blood cells. And you choose a few candidates that have the potential to be targets for this new receptor, of this new virus. You develop a test, and you test those receptors to see which one of those candidates bind to it. Do you understand the differences between those two? The comprehensive one is testing all the receptors to see which one binds. But the intuitive one is choosing a few candidates and testing those. So you ask yourself, which one is a better approach? What do you think? What would you do if it was you?
I think comprehensive approach is better
Okay. Why?
because it can give you better data. You can eliminate the receptors which is not responsible for virus intake. So your data can be more clear, I could try to say.
Okay. Anybody but do the intuitive approach? Why?
I feel like it takes too much time to do the comprehensive for some classes.
Okay. Oh, you switching the classes. You funny. But I see how you've been, but no, you're thinking about the midterms and stuff. I get you. All right. Go ahead.
In this case, I'm a scientist and I know what I'm doing. I know what these receptors are. I do the intuitive approach because I probably already know what kind of viruses bind to certain receptors. So I just choose the ones that I think were right.
Okay. Go ahead.
I take the intuitive approach because you're studying the virus. You're not studying the cells, and the virus would likely not use a different method to bind to different receptors.
We don't know.
I mean, yeah, but if you well, that's
We
what
don't know.
I'm getting there. Hold on. So if you choose a handful of different receptors, based on if you read the literature and you find ones that it can bind to, even if you take a small control group, right, and it binds to all of those in the same way, you can observe it. You don't need to run through all of them.
So there is no right or wrong, right? Maybe there's 1,000 receptors on the cell. So the comprehensive approach maybe takes you, I don't know, 5 months to go through and test them all. And maybe out of those 1,000, I'm just making up numbers, there's 40 that come out, right? 40 receptors that are ones that it could potentially bind to. Maybe when you look at the literature, you come up with 15 different candidates, or maybe 25 candidates, and 7 or 4 hit. You still have something to work with. You just have way more, you have an exhaustive, list here. And as a scientist, what it's going to come down to is actually when you start going through and figure out what binds, it's going to be, how well do they bind, and are they actually doing something inside the cell or not for this virus is using, right? So again, there's no right or wrong. It's just two different approaches. And you're going to have to make that decision as a scientist to figure out where you want to put your time. And again, at this point, we're just figuring out, right, how we would go about doing things, because it gives you a sense of how you think, depending on what the situation is. All right, so is one approach better than the other? Comprehensive approach, the pros, it's subjective, it's non-biased, it exhausts all possibilities, and it uses logic-based deductions. But the cons are, it requires discipline. Someone said, I ain't trying to do all that. I ain't got the time to exhaust all possibilities, right? I need to get back to this video game. I got to get back to taking somebody out to this dinner, spending some money on them, right? I don't know, not y'all, but other people, right? It can be more time consuming. The solution may not be based on existing information. It may not be logical. But intuitively, it can accelerate the answers if your intuition is correct. The solution may not be logical. It strengthens your intuitive-based knowingness. So what I'm talking about is that intuitive-based muscle. And you learning and having confidence in that muscle. We're going to talk in a minute about how you can go about doing that. It can prolong answers if the intuition is not correct. You can be biased, and your emotions could cloud your judgment. So what I'm telling you is this, and this is my own theory, but I make stuff up, right? And I'm trying to make it up in a way that makes sense to me, and if I convince you, then I got you. Anyway, I'm gonna have fun with it, right? In my mind, we have our emotions. Our emotions run through certain channels in us, right? And they make us feel a certain way. But in my mind also, our creativity runs through the same channels as your emotions.
That figures.
But the key is that you have to be able to discern that when you're receiving information, is it being clouded by your emotions, or do you have clarity there and you're just letting those thoughts flow through those channels and you have clarity to what you're actually receiving? And being biased, I really want this to happen, will stop you from maybe seeing a solution or a possibility, because in your mind you're closing off. I don't want to see that happen because it's going to be this. I really want this to happen, close this down, right? Versus I'm open and I'm ready to move into that place within me of knowingness and receive that right information, right? That takes practice. And when you learn, I believe that your intuition is the most powerful part of how us as humans can think and solve. I believe that if we process information from our heart space, that place within us, of that place of knowingness, where it's warm and fuzzy, and you can actually just be still and let the information come to you, you can receive information from a place of knowingness, and still, as a scientist, you still have to go through and design experiments to prove it. And then you let your left brain think about it and analyze it and all those other pieces. But we're trained in the Western society to put all of our trust in our left brain. If it's not logical and this and that, then, what do you? But it's just is what it is, right? But I can tell you that I learned to trust my gut, and the times where I was going back and forth in grad school with my principal investigator about a particular direction of our experiments, when I put my foot down, and you're saying it, I was a grad student, but I put my foot down. I'm like, no, we're not doing this. And she looked at me like, what? I'm like, no, my gut says this. Every single time I did that, I was right. And my boss learned to trust my gut. Every single time. Something in me was like, no. And I was right every single time. But again, we have to learn how to trust it, right? And it all started from when she started trusting my gut on that model. We got funded for that $1.4 billion. You know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't like it just kind of came out of nowhere. She started saying, like, damn, Fred, because there were certain times of the year where I don't know how the stars would align, but however the stars and planets align, it would be like a 2-week period where my mind was just fire. like I was thinking at like a super whatever level, and I'm like, Renee, I'm fire right now. She's like, read these papers right now and come up with a model for me. I'm like, boom, and I'm just read, feed it, and I'm just come up with models for it. And then after the 2-week period, I'm gonna go back to still dumb old Fred. But during that 2-week period, where I put my foot on the gas pedal, I'm just pumping out stuff, right? And so she was like, okay, that's what's up. But again, it's just something to think about. Because what I talk about next is that sometimes we have to learn things in a comprehensive way to then loosen ourselves up and give ourselves permission to then be intuitive about it. Right? Sometimes we have to see the patterns in things, and then it says, oh, now I can take this shortcut because I see this pattern. But it doesn't make a difference however you get there. One, you just want to be able to understand your approach and how you do it. And two, you want to be able to change it up if it's not working. Does that make sense? Talk to me, y'all. What you guys thinking? Right?
I agree.
I mean, it's your generation and the problems that you guys are going to be charged to solve, they're going to probably be complicated in a lot of different ways. And I want to make sure that I prepare you guys to use all the tools that are available and how you think to solve it. Not feeling like it has to be one way or the other, right? So in your study group, if you tend to think more left brain, comprehensive, systematic, methodical, then you probably want to have somebody in your study group that thinks more right brain, intuitive, loop-de-loop than you. Because you can learn from that person. Because I was the cat that even though we solved this physics problem and I used my right brain intuitive way to solve it and got the right answer, I want to know how you did it. And I went through every single one of your steps to see if any of your steps were more efficient than mine. And if they were, then in the back of my mind, is it efficient because it was a fluke? And it just worked in this one time? Or did that step you skip is universal and it'll work every time? And I'm like, boom, let me get that, right? You just want to have tools to problem solve. You don't know what the professor is going to give you on exam. You don't know how you may even need these tools later on in life to problem solve, but I'm just trying to acquire everything because I don't know. Talk to me, what y'all thinking?
So I'm really glad you mentioned how emotion can cloud your right brain judgment. You know, that's right brain is like how I've lived my entire life. Like this is like I'm just now, not just now, but I have before, but I'm just now starting to reawaken my left brain. You know, so it's really good. It's really cool to like personally have that be acknowledged right now. Also considering working it as a team. That's not something that I really put a lot of thought into. So just paying attention to the left brain decisions would be very helpful for me. And you know, it's all a very personal thing I just shared, but I feel like it's relevant.
No, I mean, what I would say is that, I don't know you like that.
Yeah.
But what I will say is that maybe you have spent a lot of time playing on the right brain side, but the way you went about solving these problems, you know, you can go left brain, and you did. Right? So maybe there's a balance there, or maybe you're just working that muscle, but the muscle, there's still the muscle there, right? Like it's a lot different than people who are right brain and are resistant to going left. They're just like, they can have that resistance there. They're like, no. Go ahead, Dewan.
You said America is more like logically minded. What makes you say that?
Say it again?
You're saying like this nation is like kind of logically.
That's what you're training in school. You're training in school to learn how to problem solve and then show how you solve that problem using logic.
What's the alternative?
So, this is what I would say. All information that is new information that's coming in is abstract. All information is. It's only logical when you understand the steps to it and you can replicate it. When you first discover it, it's abstract. Right? Yeah. But we automatically go to the stuff we know already. And that's where all of our marbles are, right? Yeah. But it all starts off abstract. Right? Before calculus was created, someone, visualized the formulas and whatever they did to come up with it, and then before they could teach it to somebody else and they understood what the hell they were talking about, they thought it was abstract. What the hell you mean slice this and this integration? Like, what the hell that's gonna do? Anyway, I'm talking smack. But I'm just saying that that's just how our minds work. And I'm just saying that if you learn how to play on the other side, it makes, speed up things. And it also may give you a way to distinguish yourself from other folks that don't know how to work that muscle.
That actually, I thought of like a parallel I can draw here between science and art. Mm-hmm. The avant-garde literally translates to the vanguard. The people who are out front, the people who are discovering, in the military, the people who are going out and scouting. And artistically, avant-garde, it seems a little wacky when you don't know what it is. Like, what is this person doing? But really what it is it's experimentation in its purest form. You are on the bleeding edge of what art could be next, right? So if we translate that to a scientific analogy, you are out here doing stuff, you have to be right-brained to be on the cutting edge. You have to be, because you don't have any more books to study. You're the one writing the books. You don't have any methodical processes because you're the one making it up. you're the one inventing these processes, and that's coming from a purely, you have to have the right brain to be on the bleeding edge of what's happening.
I would agree. And, you know, depending on if you guys stay in science or engineering or whatnot, and after you guys, you know, become, you know, familiar with these principles, with these concepts, you know, like, I feel like for myself, I learned the rules so then I could break them. And when I was breaking the rules, that's when I was on the cutting edge. Because really, you know, a scientist is really an artist. They have a canvas there, and they're understanding these principles of nature, of the universe, and trying to actually solve things or create things. That's art. All right, you guys, we done philosophized about a whole bunch of stuff. You guys got me doing all that. I'm blaming it on y'all. Why you guys like to philosophize like that? All right, so we're gonna narrow this back down to how this right here can affect you. So when you engage your word problem in a STEM course, how do you set up the problem to be solved? Right? And a lot of times when you're learning something for the first time, you're saying, the professor says, set it up this way. And you set it up that way. And that's more of a comprehensive or more of a led or logic approach because they're giving you direction. Until you then maybe feel comfortable and decide, because you have a word problem that's different, how to set it up differently. But again, it's just you understanding what your approach is and understanding if it's working in that situation and how to pivot if it's not. So the idea is that, you know, we're going to talk just really quickly about understanding your process. And this diagram at the very end is that when you understand your approach to something, either it be comprehensive, I'll put comprehensive on this side of the spectrum, and I'll put intuitive on this side of the spectrum. And I'm just going to acknowledge the fact that you could use both, right? One of the things that I used to do when I used to play video games, I deleted them off my phone, and unless I'm playing with my kids, and my son can whip me now, so I don't like to play them anymore. I would play the video games on my phone, and then I could realize where my mind was in each time of the day when I was playing the video games. Because there's certain times of the day I'm playing the video games, and my mind was like, oh, I'm going to think through all the possibilities of this. I'm like, it's thinking comprehensive. And there's other times it was like, no, I don't feel like I want to do all that. I'm going to go intuitive. But just that fact right there gave me a sense of like where my mind was, because I tend to be in the middle. Although I know I can definitely play on this side, right? I can go linear, but I can't go linear like some folks who just don't like to play on this side at all. They can go linear to the umpteenth power. Like that's not me. But again, I want that person on my team so I can figure out if they solve a problem that way, how they did it, and if it's gonna work in a way that makes sense to me. So you could use both. And you want to understand what your approach is, and then you want to take the time to be conscious of the steps that you took. You want to understand the steps, and you want to understand why they worked or why they didn't work. You don't just want to be like, ooh, I'm plugging and chugging, I'm throwing this formula in there, all the units match up, it has to be this. Like, no, it don't have to be that. Right? You want to understand every single step. And then you want to evaluate. You want to evaluate your win and understand how you won, or you want to evaluate that loss and make sure that you change up things or tinker with things so you don't lose that same way again. There's nothing wrong with a loss. A loss is going to teach you something and force you to grow if you take the time to think about it, reflect on it, and grow. Or that loss is just going to be, I'm stubborn and I'm doubling down on my same thing over and over and over again, because it's comfortable to me. Some people do that. Not none of y'all, but there's some other people that I have met. You know, it's kind of deep. And I remember this one student was like, I'm gonna do it my way. And I'm gonna lose my way. I was like, damn, that's deep. And they did it, they lost their way. It was a self-fulfilling prophecy. They're like, I'm not changing up. And there's a difference between being persistent and stubborn. That person was stubborn. Persistent, I'm gonna change some stuff up and still figure out a way to get to the end versus like, no, I'm gonna double down on the stuff that I do because emotionally, I have an attachment to that process that my image is attached to or whatever else where I'm not gonna change it. So if it is a W, then you have it locked in of how and why, and you move on. But if it's a loss, you change, you modify, so then you can try again, pay attention to how you tried again, and then make sure you can try to get to the outcome that you want. Right? I want you guys to understand your process. All right, any thoughts, any comments?
You grazed briefly over discomfort there, and sounds like a bad thing generally speaking, but discomfort's really important.
Say the last part again.
Discomfort is important. Like if you're just comfortable wherever you are, whatever you're doing, you're not really gonna do much. You know, if you're living perfectly in every moment, then that's all there is for you. You know, you don't really have anything to strive towards. You know, discomfort makes you seek comfort, and if you're too comfortable, you settle. And yeah, I mean, and then it's an important facet to growth and progress.
So I like that. I'm gonna put a twist on it.
Yeah, please.
So one of the constants that we have in the universe is change. Whatever we see right now, even though it looks like a solid, something's moving in between there on a quantum level. It's not really solid, right? Change is the only constant that we have. So the way you win is that there's only two different extremes of change. There is, you can expand and grow, or you can try to contract and control stuff and try to keep it the same.
It's impossible.
It's impossible, but I'm not saying that fear and some of these other emotions don't have people thinking and trying that approach, right? So we know with chemistry, entropy is going to come in there and just blow that bug up and knock it off because again, it takes energy to create order and it takes energy to create structure, but change is a constant, right? So if you choose, it doesn't have to be that you're uncomfortable, but if you would choose to ride the edge and expand in every moment, the universe will respond to you with passivity. But if you choose to try to keep things the same, the universe will respond by blowing that up and creating a change that's going to happen no matter what. I would argue choose to expand and grow. Choose to find ways to be uncomfortable or ride your edge to that next level of what's possible instead of, I just want to kind of keep things the same and they're not going to be the same, they're going to change.
So I'll go ahead and put a twist on what I said as well. Rather than it being the importance of discomfort, but rather being able to sit with discomfort. Being able to be okay with discomfort. And
being okay with not knowing.
Yeah.
Being okay, I mean, and I guess what I would also just say is that if your approach to learning is curiosity, you'll never be uncomfortable because the curiosity just forces you to move in and be like, I wonder how, I wonder why, right? It doesn't have to have resistance to it. And that's sustainable for the rest of your life. If you're just really curious, right?
Yeah.
All right, any other thoughts, any other comments? You guys are bringing up some good stuff. All right, so there is some homework, but of course it's the homework that you don't have to do because you guys aren't getting graded on this. And this is really your work, right? All the things that I'm talking to you guys about, I'm challenging you to do what we call inner work. How do you work about mastering your inner process and your inner self? How do you work on becoming confident in your ability to master your emotions and thoughts and optimize yourself as a student of science? So you can choose 5 problems from your current homework assignment, and you could try to choose word problems or process problems if they're available. And then maybe you change up the way that you actually go about approaching those problems and seeing are there multiple ways of solving those problems. Right? And again, like it's one of those things where like sometimes we just think time is one of those things where, I don't have time for that because I gotta get through this. But, at some point you're gonna move from working hard to working efficiently and effectively. And you're gonna put more time into the quality of your thinking. You want good quality thinking versus doubling down on bad thinking for longer periods of time, right?
Something about the definition of insanity.
Yeah. But there's different things that I'm challenging you to do if you decide to take that challenge with, and these are things potentially you can incorporate into your midterms or as you think about your final exams. Because at some point, your final exam may be comprehensive, and you really want to be able to tie all these concepts that you're learning into something comprehensive and unified with connections to everything. So, it all makes sense from the big picture to all the small details. Cool. All right, y'all. You guys have a great Wednesday.